Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. On the show today, it's the final race preview show of the year, and it's a title showdown in Valencia. Will Francesco Bagnaia take his maiden MotoGP title, or will reigning champ Fabio Quartararo find a way to snatch it once again? We're also taking a look at some of the riders who'll be enjoying their last rides with their respective teams this weekend. Your questions answered, predictions, and could there be a new MotoGP team on the horizon? The recording date is Wednesday, the 2nd of November. My name is Harry Benjamin. Joining me as ever is Crash's MotoGP editor, Pete McLaren, and former Grand Prix rider and British champion, Keith Huewen. And well, this is it, Keith. We didn't think, I don't know, a few months ago, we'd get a title showdown at the very last race. But here we are, 23 points in the favour of Pecco Bagnaia. It's in the bag for him, is it?
Yeah, I think it is. I think that I wouldn't say anything other than that. I mean, even if he doesn't do the business this weekend, Quartararo's still got to do the business to get enough points to actually snatch it from him at the last round. We've seen these last round encounters before where it's all gone particularly wrong for somebody. The most famous one, obviously, is if you go back to, 2006 with Valentino Rossi, something like that. I seem to remember where he lost it in the final round. So it does happen, but I can't really see it happening this. For me, the big deal is we've got 8 Ducatis on the rank. There's surely got to be some kind of team orders. Surely there has got to have been some kind of conversation gone around all of the teams that are contracted to Ducati to try and make sure this is going to work out okay and they're not going to impede Bagnaia in any way, shape or form. From a rider perspective, the biggest problem you've got going into a final round with this kind of fight on, it's easier for Quartararo. He's lost the championship unless he comes up with something brilliant for himself and something unlucky for Bagnaia. So really, Quartararo should have no pressure this weekend. He's just going to be flying around there doing his very, very best right the way through free practice qualifying and then the race. But for Bagnaia, he's got to make that work. Now, as soon as you go into, I just need these few points mode, that's when you start making mistakes. And Valencia is one of those tracks where you can find yourself on the floor for virtually no reason. Now, I've looked at the weather forecast. It's not looking bad, which is a good thing for Bagnaia, because at the end of the day, where you had the biggest problems at Valencia is suddenly when you turn left after you've been doing a load of right-handers for the last I don't know how long, and so on. It's a track that suddenly you need the other side of the tyre. And if the tyre's cooled a little bit because it's freezing cold, because it's damp or whatever it might be, you can make a mistake. It's going to take a mistake from Bagnaia to give Quartararo even a slight crack in the door to ease his foot through. I can't see it myself. I think Bagnaia's got the job done. Going into Valencia, he has all the advantage. With 8 Ducatis, including his own, on the grid, you surely must have some kind of orders there to not impede in any way. I mean, Bastianini is the man that's in my mind mostly, just purely and simply because next year they're going to be teammates. Can you imagine starting that off next year if Bagnaia's championship is costed by his teammate Bastianini at the final round of this year? Can't see it happening myself. I think we saw Bastianini defer to Bagnaia last time out. I think he'll do it again if he has to this time out. It's just a question of Ducati getting all their management ducks in a row, having words with all of their satellite teams and independent teams and everybody that's involved with Ducati to make sure that Bagnaia is protected at this round. Is that a good thing? If they didn't, I would call Ducati's professionalism very poor. This is a situation, it's a big deal for Ducati. They've not won a championship in so long. You know, to not get some kind of orders out there as a corporation would, in my view, be unprofessional. You know, it's unpalatable to us fans watching from the sidelines because you want to see a flat-out race between everybody on the track, but it's unprofessional from a manufacturing point of view if you don't do everything in your power to make sure that championship is in the bag.
And I think it might actually produce, let's say, a decent race, because if another Ducati rider can blast away into the distance and take that win that Quartararo, as Keith just said, has to have, even to have a chance, if another Ducati rider can take that off the table, great. So I think that there's actually, from Ducati's side, the team orders are a bit more simple this time than they were for the previous races, because they can say to the guys, let's say after qualifying, if they've got a couple of Ducatis on the front row, which wouldn't be a shock, look guys, disappear into the distance, win the race, ride for yourself. No problem there for us, because if you do that, you're by definition giving Pecco the championship. So I think it could still be, it's a very complicated situation, as Keith explained, but I think we could still see a good race at the front. Also because you've got guys mixed in there who really don't care about the outcome of the championship. The likes of Marquez, the Suzuki guys that are leaving, maybe the Aprilias as well, Vinales. Alesia's obviously got to be a little bit careful because he's got a title fight with Bastianini for third. That's only, I think, 1 point in it, isn't it? So those guys have got to be a little bit more careful, but their teammates don't. So, you know, there's a lot in the mix there. But I think from Ducati's point of view, they'll actually breathe a sigh of relief if they see some other Ducatis on that front row, Jorge Martin, someone like him on pole, Jack Miller maybe wanting to go out with a big bang, and just say to them, look, guys, you go ahead. You just blast into the distance, and let's just take all the stress out of what could happen if Quartararo wins this race. Because, as Keith said, that's got to happen first. Quartararo's got to win this race, which is a massive task. I mean, where was he last year? I think he was 5th place. You know, it's not an easy one for him to win around here, and he's got to do that. So he's got to ride the race of his life. I mean, to be on the podium would be a fantastic result for Quartararo this weekend, but who knows? Will he pull out the magic? I mean, Keith mentioned 2006. That's the one we keep hearing, the big upset, wasn't it? But I think he was only 8 points between Rossi and Hayden, wasn't it? This is 23. It's on another scale, really, and it's a massive task. Bagnaia, he's got to keep it on 2 wheels, basically. And if he does that, and he's top 14, even if Quartararo wins, he's champion. And as he said, they've been close, but they've never had this championship since Stoner. You know, Stoner was run-up again in 08. They had a couple of times with Dovi finishing runner-up. Bagnaia was runner-up last year. Looks like Gigi's finally going to tick that box of a Premier Class championship at Ducati. He's won championships with Aprilia, Superbike, other Grand Prix classes, but this is the one he's wanted for all these years. So it's all heading in Bagnaia's direction. Even the weather, as Keith says, you know, if it was going to pour down on Sunday, that would add a bit more drama, wouldn't it? But it does look like it'll be stable weather, although a bit chilly, as Keith also mentioned. So yeah, watch out on the is it the right side of the tyre? I think round there, isn't it? Yeah, easy to be caught out.
Lot to look forward to this weekend as well, isn't there? Because I think there's, you know, as well as the action out on track, there's all the finalising action back in pit lane as well, with personnel swapping places or committing themselves to other manufacturers. You've got the test coming up the week after as well, which is critical for so many people. And then Valencia is going to be alive this next week. You're going to be scribbling, Pete, for Crash.
And only a 1 day test, of course, usually in the past, isn't it? We've had the 2 days at Valencia. You get the Monday off for everyone to sort of get over their hangovers from the end of season parties that the riders might have had, and then they're back on the track Tuesday and Wednesday. But this year it's only Tuesday, so that's going to be a packed test, as you can say, Keith. I mean, as soon as the lights go on, they'll be sending people out of pit lane on current bikes, on new bikes. You've got guys changing teams, so yeah, it's going to be non-stop. It's a busy week.
There's all that crossover that always amuses me at this time of the year as well, because there'll be people that are going to be going to new teams and new situations in 2023 that are still contracted to the end of 2022 with the teams they're with. So it's kind of a situation where for each and every team, they've almost got to manage the new stuff that they're going to be playing with on Tuesday without letting the people that are going to be moving know too much about what's going on or what their plan is for 2023. Really difficult to manage, and I think Gigi's in that slightly difficult position, isn't he? From bearing in mind that there's more Ducati personnel than there are anybody else nowadays.
It's certainly going to be a fascinating one to watch, both on track and, as you say, in the pit lane and behind the team garages. To reaffirm, Fabio, to win or to stand a chance of taking the title, must win the race. Pecco has to be 15th or lower. And just saying that is a pretty massive task. A nightmare scenario, I imagine, is if we get a Phillip Island and suddenly you've got the Suzukis and Marc Marquez going for the win and the podium, and then that's going to all of a sudden put Pecco Bagnaia under a little bit more pressure. Fabio might be able to squirt his way through as well. Mental pressure, surely, for both of them is going to be a fair challenge this weekend.
No, I think that Quartararo's got a plain and simple job, you know, and we're going to see what he's prepared to do, because he's going to have to stick it on the line through free practice and through qualifying. He's got to qualify on the front row of the grid to start with. Valencia's a nightmare place to pass. Bagnaia, to be honest with you, even if he didn't turn up this weekend, I think he's still going to win it, because I just think that Quartararo's got too much of an uphill job. But if Quartararo does put it on the line, I mean, I've said this before on this podcast. As a rider, you can turn up and say, "I've got no pressure this weekend. I'm just going to give it 100%." he's already given it 100%. Every time he turns up, every time he cocks his leg over that bike, wherever he ends up, he's already given it mentally and physically everything he can, even if he finishes 4th, 5th off the podium, whatever it might be. So to say that, well, it must be easy for him now because he's got no pressure, he can just go and do whatever he wants to do, he's just got to win the race, it doesn't count because he's trying to do that every weekend anyway. So we get here at Valencia, it's going to be about how that Yamaha feels for him this weekend. He's got to put it on the front row. I don't think even the second row will be any good either. Once you're away at the front, once you're in line, your wheels are in line around Valencia, it's very difficult to make a pass. You're coming onto the front straight, which is a long, fast straight as it turns out, but you've got sort of bottom gear selected onto the straight. The Ducatis launch from nowhere as well. You know, the ride height adjustment they've got, they'll blast down that straight. So Yamaha's got virtually no chance of making any passes into turn one. And you're done, really. So Quartararo's got an impossible task, is my view. And even if Quartararo was to dump it, I know that that's not the way he wants to go out. The fact of the matter is that Quartararo has got to win. Pete's covered it absolutely perfectly. You know, Ducati, will they just release them all? Will they say, okay, well, if you're in, front positions, go for it? As Pete's already said, that makes sense. But I think where it gets more complicated is if Bagnaia's up there with them and they're all messing around with each other and Quartararo's disappearing in the distance, which is a scenario I don't think even Quartararo expects.
Well, never say never in MotoGP. Stick around for the weekend. It's going to be very, very exciting indeed. You mentioned, though, earlier, Keith, it's going to be a last dance, really, for a lot of not just personnel, but also a lot of our MotoGP riders. In fact, 10 riders will either be racing their last race in MotoGP or moving on to another team. Miller off to KTM, Bastianini, we know, is going to Ducati, Miguel Oliveira off to RNF Aprilia, Alex Rins, both Suzukis moving to Honda territory. And we've spoken a lot about them throughout the year, but some of the riders we maybe haven't spoken too much about. I thought it'd be nice to chat about them before their last their last rides with their respective teams. And one, well, whose brother has been doing very well this year, but Pol Espargaro, not the best of years for him. Bit of an emotional final race he's expecting. How are you looking at Pol Espargaro's time at Repsol Honda? He moves to the KTM Gas team for 2023. The real highlights, well, there haven't really been that many.
Do you know what? I really expected Pol Espargaro, with the kind of style he's got and the way that he's quite aggressive on a motorbike. Pre-Honda, I thought he'd get on all right with it, and he really hasn't. And it seems to have petered out as the year's gone on. His biggest chances came early on in the season, and they've slowly gone away from him. And it just doesn't seem to have been able to find his mark at all with it as the season's developed. I mean, the thing is, when you get on a new motorbike, normally that's the kind of, default is getting on the thing as it arrives out of the crate for the first race meeting or first test. And then you develop that, through the year. But he really has not been able to do that at all. I think the Aprilia thing, I'm really looking forward to Aprilia for 2023. I'm really, really keen to see how that develops for me. That's probably for me the most exciting team for next year, the fact that we've got more Aprilias on the grid and the way that will develop. It's testing time. I struggle with this. I really do. 1 day test, and then we go to Sepang where, it could be monsoon still. You could have a track that's had car testing on it the week before, and it takes, the first shakedown day to clear a bit of room, a groove in the track. And then the first time the factory boys get on the bikes, the groove's still not there yet, and they crash their brains out on the opening day. This testing thing I do not understand it. I can't fathom why we are in the position we are with so little testing. Funding is a big thing. We don't need a funding cap in MotoGP. They just don't have that amount of money. So it's not like they've got an excess of cash to overspend like you have in Formula One. That seems to be a popular thing in Formula One at the minute. Naughty boy, Christian Horner. And it's kind of one of them things where there's just not the money for the testing. And then we roll on into the longer season if we get all of the rounds that they're planning as well. The cost involved in that, the fact that, in some circumstances, mechanics aren't getting paid any extra. Riders aren't getting paid any extra for the extra rounds that they're going to be doing during next year. I hear everybody going, well, poor them. But it is a very, very long season coming up. We've even had, with the exception of good old Pete, who's a proper workhorse in behind the scenes, we've had slightly more headlining journalists, if you like, those that like to see their faces and read their own articles, that have been complaining about how tough it's going to be during the course. I likened it to, there's one particular very famous journo that does all of the rounds, but I've always questioned how the hell he ever makes any money. But, he almost did a Ratner on us this week. If anybody remembers the jewelry store where Gerald Ratner stood up and said that his product was crap, and immediately the share price and everything collapsed around the Ratner's jewelers front because of what he'd said in this thing. And I think that some people are in a position, quite a vocal position, of saying how difficult it is and how crap it's going to be with MotoGP. Too many of them detracts from the what's the word I'm looking for? But the quality of it, that suddenly it becomes grey, that we roll into another GP, I absolutely disagree with that, by the way. To make, I disagree with it completely, because every Grand Prix we go to is an absolute, if it can stand on its own, because they are brilliant races at brilliant racetracks. You've heard me talk all the year about favourite racetracks, and I think I get to, when you ask me this, Harry, every racetrack I've got something enthusiastic to say, with the exception maybe of Valencia and of course of Le Mans. Now Le Mans is some people's absolute favourite, so who am I to say that I don't like it so much there? Valencia, I think it's a poor one to finish your season on, particularly if it was a bit closer than it is this year. If you're really going for the, if there's 5 points between the headline men, I think it's a difficult racetrack to finish a year on, and I often question why we do that. But that's not to say I don't want to see Valencia on the calendar. It's just a question of, should it be the last round? I don't think it should be, because it's I use the word Mickey Mouse. I'm sorry to say that, but it is more of a Mickey Mouse track than a race track. It's not a Phillip Island. It's not a Mugello. It's not a Portimao, where you can get stuck in and have proper racing. It's more of a line astern kind of a place. If you qualified well, you're going to be in with a chance of being on the podium. There's not going to be much of an upset.
Is that really your main angst towards the track then, just the lack of overtaking opportunities?
Well, I think the weather as well. It's at the wrong time of the year for Valencia. It doesn't show Valencia in its best light. I mean, Valencia is a great city. It's a great racetrack. From an access point of view, it's a proper racetrack. It's a proper place to go, Valencia. It's easy for people to get into that part of Europe and enjoy it. It could be a week-long holiday with a MotoGP at the end of it, which would be the way that I think a lot of people like to enjoy their Grand Prix if they're going to take a jaunt into going to one or two during the year. And I think Valencia could be a bigger one than that. It sells out as it is. I mean, it's a massive. It's like an arena. You can see everything from every one of the concrete grandstands. Doesn't matter where you sit, you can see all of the track, which is a massive advantage. It's like watching it on 3D television. It's all there in front of you, and you can see everything that's going on. But it is a bit of a concrete jungle in that they've made the most out of a very small area. Valencia have done a great job from that. But from a racing perspective, it's a difficult place to pass. And when we see motorbikes that are so close, within thousandths of a second now as they are, it makes it even harder. Back in the day when there was a bigger disparity between tyre manufacturers and performance of bikes, Valencia, okay, you could muscle it to the front or whatever you might do. Nowadays, you've got no chance. If you haven't qualified it well, I hate to hark back to the Valentino Rossi Marquez debacle of 2015, but of course there was all the big thing with somebody didn't make the pass they should have made and all the rest of it. Well, that's fine to say from the terraces, but from being on a motorbike point of view, it's not an easy place to make passes, and I think that is probably the biggest criticism, that and the weather at that time of the year.
Well, Pete, you're going to have fun. You're going to be down on the ground. But is it a good track for testing though?
Yeah. Again, it's a unique track, isn't it? When you go testing, you want something that's going to be sort of an average, don't you? Something that's going to apply for most of the season, and so that's why someone like Sepang is very good, because it's got a whole range of different, fast corners, slow corners, long straights, hard brakings. That's what you want for testing, isn't it? Really, and the danger is with Valencia, you can end up with a bike that might suit a very, very tight and twisty track, of which there are not that many. Sachsenring, of course, being another one. But so really for testing, you want something that's going to sort of be a good indicator of where you're going to be for most of the season. And I suppose looking at testing and looking at next year with these sprint races as well, are we going to have
teams working on a sprint race setup. Will they have sort of a qualifying setup, a sprint race setup, and a normal race setup, if you like? Are they going to actually have to develop bikes specifically for those shorter races? So give them even more work over the winter to sort of work on. And really, as Keith says, this test is the last chance to make a really big change before Sepang, because by Sepang it's too late really. You can tweak bits, but you can't completely throw out your engine and get another one ready in time for the Portimao test and then the start of the season. There's no time to do that. So this is the cutoff point for a lot of teams. And as we spoke about earlier, Marc Marquez, he's still waiting for a full new Honda, isn't he? And he's going to have to hope that when it arrives, it's pretty well sorted, because otherwise there's going to be some sleepless nights ahead with Sepang, I would think, before riding the bike. So he'll want to get on the bike on Tuesday, like everybody, on the 23 bike, and think, yeah, this is the direction we need, and we'll keep going in this way.
A little bit left of field. Don't know my left from my right. Just for your amusement. I am surprised that we don't have a rider and machine weight limit. So we've got parity in MotoGP. We've got millimeter measuring if you go off the track a bit. We've got this, we've got that. We've got all sorts of rules nowadays that trim things down. And as the bikes have become so close in their performance over the last few years, I can't quite understand why we've not had a rule change that gives us an overall minimum weight, rider and bike, to get even more parity. I don't know why I say that. It was something that was rattling around in my head the other day when I was thinking about what rule changes could be coming in the future as things get tighter and tighter. But you've got quite a large, you've got, some riders that are very, very small and very, very light. You've got others that are a little bit bigger, bigger muscles. Could it be that the reason we don't have that is because the bigger guys have got more levers for muscle in these bikes? The little guys have got more straight line performance, perhaps power to weight ratio being an issue quite often. I wonder if when some of these contracts are being done, whether riders have to, send in their measurements and their weights and all the rest of it. It's a bit like a beauty contest, isn't it? To see whether the rider suits the bike to an point.
Well, wasn't it Petrucci who always struggled being slightly stockier, slightly bigger, especially on that Tech 3 bike last year?
You can go back years. You can go back to Rob McElnay if you like. Rob Mac, you looked at his sector times and he was fast in the sector times where it was like really rider-wise and getting stuck in. But as soon as you got in the straight, the long straights, Rob Mac lost half a second in the sectors that you needed that performance. This is going back in the two-stroke days, of course. But, it is an issue. There's no Danny Pedrosa. I mean, little Danny. But what Danny made up for maybe in that first gear squirt, by being so light, he lost in not being able to get enough heat in the front tyre quite often through working it harder. And also do you remember Efrain Vasquez in Moto 3? Jack Miller named him T-Rex, didn't he? Short arms but plenty of bite. Whatever happened to Efrain Vasquez? Great little rider in Moto 3. Anyway, he left us a while ago, as in went away from racing. But his problem was that his short arms meant that he couldn't get his weight over the back of the bike, so it was always stood on its nose. He was an aggressive rider, but because of his stature, he couldn't place his body where he needed to place it in the braking area. So someone like Miller, being a bit bigger and a bit heavier, could push his big bum over the back of the seat and get the thing nice and level on the brakes into some of the sharper braking areas. So, different things. This is the wonderful thing about motorbike racing, isn't it? Because the rider does make a difference. Where they can place their body and how they can move around on that bike makes a massive difference. So maybe my rider weight thing is not something that will come in because nobody's mentioning it at this moment. Petrucci used to, but he was the heaviest guy in MotoGP. But I think there should be a minimum weight. I think that they should level that playing field a little bit as well. The likes of Valentino. Let's mention Valentino. He's out racing in cars where it won't matter quite so much, but Valentino was a guy that, you could not find any fat under any skin. He was like the skin of an aircraft wing pulled over his skinny chassis. There was no fat on him. In fact, he didn't look well most of the time, Valentino, if you ask me, because there was no spare meat on him. He's 6 foot and a bit, I think, Valentino. He's probably an inch taller than me. And I remember thinking, Christ, he's a big lad, really, for racing motorcycles. And it makes a difference. Powder weight makes a difference. If you
Well,
if you were a factory and you're trying to lose half a kilo off your bike, you'd probably pay hundreds of thousands of pounds to develop a bike to get rid of half a kilo. Whereas your rider, there used to be a thing in the old days where they'd say, pardon me for this, go for a good dump before you go for a ride. We want to lose a bit of weight. I'm sure it's still a thing now, folks, even though it's distasteful.
Well, one rider who is very keen on there to be a minimum weight is actually Rossi's brother Luca Marini. He's struggling with all the things you mentioned. He's a bigger guy, and he does feel he is pushing for it. But as he says, this is something that only the manufacturers, and we explained this before, only the manufacturers can really change the technical rules. They all have to agree on it, and for whatever reason, the manufacturers don't seem that keen on it. He wasn't sure why. Of course, there is the argument, as Keith explained, that smaller riders also have these disadvantages, and so that's the reason why they're not doing anything, because it's not just the big guys that lose out, the small guys can lose out as well. But another thing is that maybe the manufacturers, they don't like the idea of having to bolt bits of weight onto the bike, to make up the minimum limit. Where would they put that weight and all that kind of thing? Would it upset the handling or things like that? But definitely Marini feels exactly like you, Keith. He can't understand why it's there in Moto3, it's there in Moto2, and obviously he was fighting for the title in Moto2, wasn't he? He understands that, and he sees the disadvantages in MotoGP even now. And like his brother, he's not, there's no fat on him, but he is quite a tall guy, and so he's something that he's been struggling with these 2 years in MotoGP.
Maybe we're going to have one of them signs that you get at a fairground out the back doors of the garages, where you got the big arrow, and if you don't reach a certain height, you can't come on the bike. You can't go on this ride. You're not tall enough.
Do you think they'd have a 6'5", 100-kilogram guy on a bike? Do you reckon that would go good for drag?
Well, it'll give you a good slipstream. I mean, talking about Rob Mack, you didn't get a draft like Rob Mack, that's for sure. You could feel it from 50 yards back as opposed to the 20 yards back. You start to go like this when you're behind Rob Mack, and suddenly you're passing.
If you're an audio only listener, I do encourage you to go to our YouTube page and watch the video, because that was excellent. Keith's physical description there.
It's funny because you can feel a slipstream. You can feel when you're getting to you're back a bit and you've got to run out the corner, and it literally starts. And I can't imagine what it's like now. We've got these wings all over the bloody bikes. The amount of air being disturbed in front of you is huge now in comparison, and you just start to get a little tickle of it, and it's not. And all of a sudden it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then and you're running at the rear wheel, and you straight by. It's brilliant. I mean, slipstream is a real art. We kind of don't talk about it much nowadays because we see it so often, but really it's something you learn as a youngster on a Moto3 bike or a Talent Cup bike or something like along those lines. But it really is. I mean, in Moto3, it's like mega important to give you a second a lap. In MotoGP, with all that horsepower, it's not quite as important. It gets more important as you have less horsepower, because it's giving you that vacuum that the guy in front is clearing the air and giving you that big suction behind. Motorbikes aren't very aerodynamic. They're nowhere near as aerodynamic as a car, for instance. And cars manage the aero around them really, really well. How complex is a Formula One? When you look at it, you think, what on earth is all this? It's kind of so complex, and because it's a flat platform, it's important in Formula One. In bikes, it's a moving thing. Now we've got this ride height adjuster, sits it down a little bit more, and I can understand that, because the wings on the front, as soon as you're asking for the power and the bike sits up, again, this is not very good for anyone listening on audio, but when the bike sits up at the front when you're under power, you alter the attack angle of all of the aero, and then when you brake, you suddenly get more angle on the front. So you've got a completely different motorbike in certain parts of the track, depending on how you're riding it as well. Another thing is that again, completely alien to most of us that have ridden motorbikes for so long, is some riders smudge the front brake. Even though they're on the throttle, they're smudging the front brake as well, just to alter the angle of the motorbike. I'm sure that's not quite the same now that we've got this ride height adjustment front and rear now, but you can alter the angle of the bike. You can weight the front of the bike with a little bit of front brake, even when you're on the throttle. The way these guys ride motorbikes now is alien to the likes of my generation and maybe the generation after me. From beyond that, there's completely different. The amount of rear brake they use, the amount of front brake they use, where they use it, the balancing of the bike nowadays is so incredibly different to how it used to be. The management of tyres by weighting things and moving things around and how you operate the bike and of course you've got seamless gearboxes as well now, which means you can do more of it. You can balance the bike much neater without, and shift gears through the middle of corners and into corners when you're trail braking in there as well, because the seamless gearbox literally takes that lag out of what you do, where the suspension moves on a gear change. It doesn't move anything like as much now. I mean, we could do a whole technical piece on this. We could go on for hours about it, and I'd love to do it one day, because my understanding of it is minimal, because I have not ridden motorcycles like this. I only observe from outside and remember how it was for so many years and how you rode a motorcycle. And then you've got the likes of, talking of aliens, like Marc Marquez, who is just still brilliant and moving. Everyone had to suddenly change the way they rode a motorbike to be like Marc Marquez, because he was getting more out of it than they were. And suddenly everybody went, wow, we should try this. And again, anybody who's been on a racetrack, have you tried changing your style? Have you tried changing how you ride a motorbike? If you're slow, you can change your style easily. You can sit up a bit, you can move around a bit, you can do everything when you're slow. But when you're fast and you're already on the limit and you're looking for that kind of tiny little bit extra, and you start to move yourself about on the bike, believe me, that's when it gets really tricky.
I mean, I could actually sit and listen to that all day. That sounds like we definitely need to dive more into that. An off-season topic, I think, would be an excellent one to go to. We got a bit sidetracked from poor old Paul Espargaro, but we've done him now. If we go, let's finish that piece off though, because there's just a couple of other riders who I think they deserve their bit of airtime after all that for one final ride. So Paul, we mentioned, he's gone. He's going to the KTM fold next season. So last time with Repsol Honda, things left on the table, we think there. But Tech 3. Ralph Fernandez, Remy Gardner, both off. One's off to World Superbikes. The other is off to the new RNF Aprilia team, Ralph Fernandez. Although, ironically, Pete, it's Ralph Fernandez who is behind Remy in the standings at the moment. Best finish of 12th, which I think came back in Germany this year. So what do you make of the two KTM boys this year? Again, it just seems like a team that's not great if you're a rider, to put it bluntly.
Well, it looked like a dream lineup, didn't it? The top two in Moto2. I mean, both of them dominated. Gardner and Fernandez dominated that championship, didn't they, last year? And so to have both of them move up in the same team, it looked like a fantastic rookie lineup. But yeah, they're unlucky, aren't they? They're arriving on a difficult bike, and that's always the thing. And then you're looking at the guys you were beating, riding Ducatis like Bezzecchi and Di Giannantonio, and you know that they're looking over at those guys and going, hang on. I was beating those guys day in, day out last year, and now I'm struggling to stay with them. And I think that it's a difficult situation, isn't it? And as we know, they're both moving on. So yeah, all change. Fernandez off to the Aprilia, and Gardner off to World Superbike.
I think you said it, Pete. Rookies. You got two rookies on a bike that's not perhaps upgraded itself as much as you would have expected in 2022. I mean, they were having trouble at the factory end of things, let alone the satellite independent team. So although they're all supposed to be on factory KTMs the same, I don't think they probably would have been. And I think that despite the fact Hervé Poncharal, Guy Coulon, who own and run Tech 3, being a brilliant pastorally, looking after their team, I think it's a great little team. It's almost like a 1980s team in the way that they run things behind the scenes. It's got a professional 1980s team. It's a nice place to be. But it just didn't work. It didn't work for either rider. I couldn't make it work for whatever reason. And it's a massive shame. I think it's a great team, Tech 3, but they were kind of forced into the KTM route as well, weren't they? Raul Fernandez was forced into going to MotoGP when he didn't really want to go that way at that particular time in his life. I think he's the one that scored the bit. Well, in fact, I think both those boys have scored in that. I think Remy Gardner will be a contender in World Superbikes. He rides superbikes really well. His dad, Wayne, always used to tell me how quick, Remy was on a superbike when they used to go playing on them. So I believe Wayne on that front, even though Wayne's been a bit, should we say, cut off from the Remy side of things after saying a few things he probably shouldn't have been. Wayne is 1980s, opening his mouth when you shouldn't open your mouth. He's very much my era.
We should get him on here.
But I think Raul Fernandez going to Aprilia is a really good move for him, and I think it's good for Aprilia as well. I think he's going to enjoy it there. I think Remy going to Superbikes, he's definitely going to enjoy that there. The atmosphere in Superbikes A little bit more relaxed, no less competitive, but very, very relaxed. The whole thing in the paddock and the like will suit Remy down to the ground, and we can welcome him back when he's gone and won the World Superbike Championship.
Absolutely. And look at the man he replaced, my man, Keith Huewen, doing very well in World Superbikes this year in his first season. So you can be extremely competitive, even if you've had a bit of a lackluster season in MotoGP. Alex Marquez, another man on the move. LCR Honda, it will be his last race with them. He is off to Gresini. And really, nothing beat his 2020 podiums, really, and the only podiums he's had, those 2 second places, France and Aragon for Alex Marquez. It must be, I always think, it must be a lot of pressure on him to have the name, not just coming up, it's not like, I compare it to F1, it's not like Mick Schumacher, or if you go back a little bit, Bruno Senna, where, their fathers and uncles had so much success years ago. He's got a brother who has been there while he is also racing. That must be a lot of pressure to handle, no?
Well, I think they're all in pressure. This is, you're talking the top end of the sport here, aren't you? But at the end of the day, I look at it as a positive in that he's got somebody who can really give him a proper heads up. And they work quite well together, those two. They are a close unit, brothers. It's not like a rival. I'm sure there is when they're out playing on their motocross bikes or whatever they do nowadays, since both of them had a fair clattering over the years. I'm sure that they've limited the motocrossing a little bit. But the fact is that Mark has always been very, very positive towards his brother. And I would think that they work quite closely together. Alex Marquez hasn't performed on the LCR Honda, which surprises me a little bit. I mean, he's had flashes of brilliance here and there. And again, I think where he's going is going to, change is as good as the rest, for want of a flippant kind of a phrase to fill it all in. But pressure is there for all of them, every single rider. You mentioned Remy and Rail, they will have been under huge pressure to perform. The frustration must be huge. But the pressure of having a brother out there doing the business, I think Alex probably recognises that his brother's quite a bit special. But the good side of that, he's not quite a bit special in distance. He's quite a bit special and very, very close. So he will be giving him every piece of information that's going to help Alex. Whether he can do anything with it, is another matter. We always remember hearing Cal Crutchlow saying that, I can look at Mark's data, but I can't use any of it because it's alien. I can't make it work. If I try and do what Mark does on a motorbike, I'm just going to crash. And he's a bloody good rider, Cal Crutchlow, as he's proved yet again in semi-retirement and 37 years old.
Yeah, it was a strange thing for Alex, wasn't it? He came in during the COVID season, didn't he? He was going to be teammate to Mark. As you expect him to just sort of, as you say, Mark to be fighting for the World Championship again. He'd just come off that 2019 season where he'd got all those record points and wins and everything else. Then he gets replaced by Pole to come back to Pole before he's even done a race at Repsol Honda. They announced that Pole's going to be joining the team next year because of the delayed season. He'd never even done a racing lap, and he found out he's lost his Repsol Honda seat for the following year, but would be moved to LCR. So, well, okay. So, but again, that's still a bit of a strange way to start your MotoGP career, isn't it? And then what happens at the first race? His brother breaks his arm. And so suddenly, from being the guy who was probably expecting to just sit on the other side of the pits and learn from Mark and everything else, suddenly he's now the remaining Repsol Honda rider in the reigning champion winning team, and he has to sort of pick up from there. And in fairness to him, those podiums, during that year, he rode well then, and he did. Was the talking about brothers, wasn't it? Didn't Mark tweet? I am the brother of Alex Marquez, wasn't it? After one of those rides, just because he was aware that Alex was always getting this, you're the brother of Mark, you're the brother of Mark. And he said, let's flip this around, because credit to him, some of those, when he got those podiums, they were good rides. Aragon, he was exceptional. But then, moved to LCR after that, and really has never looked like, the guy that he was in that rookie season, which is a bit unusual because during his career previously, he was a bit of a slow burner. He gradually built up, didn't he? And yet we had this sort of, the podiums came in the rookie year, okay, at the factory Honda team, and then he hasn't been able to replicate that. So as Keith says, it's a good time to change for him. I think it is almost a make or break change. He needs to make a step up in his results on the Ducati. And of course, the big thing is, Mark's going to be looking at what he does on that Ducati, because he knows how everything about Alex, as Keith explained, he trains with him, he lives with him, they're in the motorhome together at the track. he knows what Alex can do on a bike. So if Alex gets on this Ducati and he's suddenly flying, you can imagine in Mark's head what he might be thinking. And that's I mean, people are joking about it, but they're thinking, was that maybe what Gigi was thinking? Just put that out there, Mark, if you ever want to ride a Ducati, look what your brother's doing on it.
Yeah.
I think you made a good point there, Pete, and I'm glad you did, about the slow burn. Alex Marquez winning his world titles was a slow burn. It took him a while to do it in Moto3. I think that we've not seen the best of him yet in MotoGP, and I think that's still to come.
Absolutely. Well, I think, as we say, a change can always be a good thing. So he will, and we've seen that Bastianini can ride that Gresini bike very well indeed. So we keep our fingers crossed, Alex Marquez in 2023. Finally, as we've had a question as well, Brian Ritchie's, what is your take on Darren Binder going to Liqui Moly Husqvarna Intact GP in the Moto2 class? Of course, it will be Darren Binder's last race in MotoGP for now, as he goes down to Moto2, although he's never actually raced in Moto2, of course, because he made the jump from Moto3, which, Keith, I think is fair. You were very critical of him before he came into MotoGP. He had a great result back in Indonesia, I think, second round, his best result so far this season, which was 10th. But since then, I mean, that bike as well, that Yamaha has clearly proven tricky, but he's had some very experienced teammates along the way too.
I think critical of Darren Binder for making the jump. I mean, it was a big, big jump. And if you looked at his track record of, everything except the bloody pace car, it was one of those situations where, Darren Binder's enthusiasm for that last yard of braking into whatever turn he arrived at on the inside of somebody was actually quite a frightening prospect for everyone in MotoGP. But I think he's done a great job in MotoGP. I think he really, really has. I think Darren Binder has shown great restraint where he needed it and performance where he could get it. I think Binder's been a very good MotoGP rider this year, and I've been really impressed with what he's done. And I think it's unfortunate that he's found himself outside of the loop now, which is I really do find that he's done a good job this year. I think Binder. All the critics like myself have all been stuffed back under their stone, and Binder rode very well on a MotoGP bike. It's he's not done with yet, Darren Binder. He's got that kind of South African grit about him as well, hasn't he? I mean, the Binder family, if you like, Brad Binder, they're quite tough characters. He's not done and dusted yet, that's for sure. He'll be back with a bang at some stage. Watch out, Moto3, because I think riding a Moto3 bike, although a completely different technique, he's going to be arriving quite a bit slower than he has done before. And I think we're going to be back into a situation where Binder on the brakes is going to be something to be watching, to behold again. I'm looking forward to it.
Do you mean Moto2? He's already done 3.
I mean Moto2, sorry. I do mean Moto2.
Watch out Moto3 as well.
Moto2 will suit him really, really well. I think that it's closer to MotoGP than it's ever been since the Triumphs and the electronics have changed to the point they've come to. So he will be well equipped coming backwards just that tad to Moto2. If he went back to Moto3, then it would be frightening for all of us. Apologies.
Yeah, I think Darren deserves another year in MotoGP. He's just like Remy, isn't it? They've just been unlucky. These 2 grid places are disappearing, and so you know there's less rides available. And obviously Dovi's retired, so there's one place there. But then Augusto Fernandez is coming up as the rookie, and those are the 2 guys that are losing out in the musical chairs, aren't they? But yeah, a shame, because some of Darren, I mean, the opening lap at Sepang when he passed, was it 12 riders or something? I mean, he's a real racer, and he's so early in his career, and he's showing that promise already. And it would have been great for him to get another year, on the Aprilia if he'd have been able to stay there. But even so, I think it's good for him, as Keith says, to have had this experience in MotoGP. It's going to stand him in good stead. He's going to a very good team in Moto2. It's a solid team there. And I think he's got everything lined up for a great season in Moto2. And I'm sure we haven't seen the last of him in MotoGP.
Agreed.
Well, you mentioned there, obviously, losing Suzuki, those 2 slots available. And in the news in the last week, we had KTM are reportedly buying MV Agusta, which seems fairly significant. Of course, a very renowned team. Keith will talk about, the likes of Agostini, even John Surtees, I think, raced for them back in the day. 10 world titles being achieved amongst them. They reportedly going to take some stake in 2023 before a 100% stake in the team by 2024. Could that provide a route back into the top flight of motorcycle racing? There are 2 slots available, hypothetically.
It's a badging job, if you ask me. I think we're going to see something along the same lines as we've seen with Moto3 and KTM, Husqvarna, rah-de-rah-de-rah. I think that it will be a KTM because MV don't have anything that is in the development process at all for much for the road, let alone for racing. It's a shame that MV will collapse without some input from the likes of KTM or someone else. It's a great shame. MV have, we mentioned badging. They've been in Moto2, but of course it's just a badge on the side of the motorcycle. To lose the MV name would be a disaster. I mean, you mentioned 2 names there, John Surtees and Giacomo Agostini, but I remember Phil Reed particularly again on MV looking so incredibly good quality. It's a fantastic name from the past, but it's fallen by the wayside a little bit. It needs a bit of an injection. So KTM doing what they're doing, will we see the Tech 3 team suddenly be the MV team? From a KTM point of view, it would make sense, wouldn't it? So they don't have the criticism perhaps of being a KTM factory team as they are and not performing. You can sort of offload a little bit of that. Badge it MV, and suddenly, if they're not performing 100%, it's not the KTM name that's getting criticised, it's the MV name. And of course, if you suddenly make it perform, you're creating a marketplace for MV straight away from a road badge point of view. I mean, there's a lot of clever marketing going into this as well. It all comes down to, at the end of the day, to price. For a relatively small factory, KTM don't half spread themselves over a long way. When you think of their off-road department, their road race department, they do a remarkable job for a relatively small outfit. And to get a name like MV, I don't know how much money's being mooted about, how much it's costing them, but it won't be a lot of money, I wouldn't have thought, in the grand scheme of things. And to get a badge like MV, worth paying for, in my view. Would be a terrible shame if it went to the wall and just got broken up.
Yeah, it looks like the Suzuki replacement we spoke about before, didn't we? But it would be a genuine new manufacturer. It wouldn't be a rebadged effort. And that, as Keith explained, that really rules out KTM, because that's their philosophy is to use the same platform, isn't it? The engine and the bike as a common platform, whether it's in Moto3 or whatever, and just badge it up a bit differently. And that's, that's what they do, and it works for them. And it's a great way to brand and use motorsport. So, but it's not, it seems that's not what Dorna want for this replacement for Suzuki, whoever that might be in the future. So it would have to be someone like BMW or whoever, or basically someone that's going to come in and build, their own engine, their own chassis, a different bike, and not like the gas at Tech 2 next year, which is a KTM. So so it looks like, I'm sure KTM will want to use motor racing in some way, because they've got such experience of building up their brands. KTM is a dirt bike brand, wasn't it? But now it's so synonymous with racing because they've used racing to make that transition across, same with the Husqvarna and the gas brands. And now this is a bit different because they've got a brand that's already very famous in road racing. So it's a different kind of acquisition, if you like, to go for something that's already very famous, as Keith explained, in racing. So let's see what they've got planned for it. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be this sixth manufacturer that we're all wondering who might that be in the future. I don't think KTM, you're looking at needing sort of 50, 60 million plus for a factory project with your own bike and that kind of thing. And that's a lot of money to find now. And again, they'd be competing against themselves, of course, as well, wouldn't they? With their own KTM bikes on the Red Bull team and the gas team.
Nobody told Ducati about that when they got 8 bikes on the grid competing against themselves.
Yeah.
I've got to say
the same bikes. Yeah.
The gas brand and the MV brand. Gas. I was expecting sort of somebody to be leaping over a car on a road race bike when you got gas on the side of things. I think the MV is a much better badge fit for the likes of Tech 3, but you're right, it's gas next year for Tech 3. But In the future, you've got to say MV, when it comes 100% under the wing of KTM, would be a nice fit for the independent team.
Well, we'll see how that develops, of course. Now, Valencia, we've spoken about endings for a lot of riders and teams. It will also be the end for a Moto3 team. And I suppose after the turbulence of the Tom Booth-Amos incident coming to light, the Fernandez-Aragon pit blocking issue, and then, of course, elation, a double podium and a stunning win for John McPhee and in Sepang, Max Biaggi officially confirmed that the Max Racing team will not be on the Moto3 grid in 2023 years. In 2023. I was going to say every year they've been in Moto3, they have scored at least one win. So I think fairly successful. Why do you think this has come about, Keith? And what next for Max Biaggi?
Been a very tough year, hasn't it, really, for them, with the controversy behind the scenes as well as what's gone on the track. I mean, he's going to be scratching his head now, Max, after John took John has looked so good this year. I don't know what the reason is behind the scenes. Max Biaggi, I think most people looked at it and thought, what's he doing? Why is he involved in all of this? It doesn't seem to be a nice fit for him, perhaps. I'm not surprised. It must probably come down at the end of the day to funding. That's usually the big issue, and I think that we've still not seen the fallout from the economic climate. We talked about this right at the very beginning of this year. What is going to be the future? Suzuki pulling out got to be down to the economics of the world at this particular time and moving forward. They've taken a look at where this is all going and have jumped ship quite early, although not early enough, because they committed themselves to 5 years extra with Dorna just a few months earlier. So Suzuki had changed their minds at the last minute. Maybe Max Biaggi, maybe the world out there that we don't see as a trio and the fans perhaps don't see as well. Management is out there trying to bring in sponsorship all of the time from all these different areas. Maybe it's a lot drier, that pond, than we're giving it credit for. Maybe it is quite tough to find the kind of funding you need. Maybe that's the reason why Max Biaggi has decided to pull the rug out from underneath that project.
It's been sort of a partnership, I think, with Peter Ertl, with his team. So you've got sort of Max and Peter Ertl sort of working together, but Peter Ertl's now running the Liquid Moly. So we're talking about Darren Binder, the Moto3 effort, if you like, of that part next year. And it seems like they're sort of going their separate ways, Peter Ertl and Max. And as we're saying now, where will Max go? We don't know. Cerro Garda, that was always sort of Max's sponsor, wasn't it, when he was racing in Superbike and stuff like that? And it's been on the bike now. And I don't think they're part of the team with Peter Ertl next year and Intact, the Moto3 team with Husqvarna. So are they planning to move with Max? Could he go to Moto2? He's an Aprilia, I think it's an ambassador or something, global ambassador or ambassador. You see him in the Aprilia gear, don't you, sometimes in the paddock and in the pits. So he's got a relationship with Aprilia. I mean, will he pop up somewhere there? They're obviously having the satellite team with RNF. Could it be something to do with that? We don't know, really. Max is sort of just, as you said, Harry, he's just sort of hinted in this statement that he's got, there'll be some sort of racing plans in the future, but exactly what they are, we don't know, other than they won't be in Moto3. So
you touched, it's a very good point there, because the funding will go with Max. And that quite often happens with the figurehead, the Cerro Garda side of things and the like. Is it enough, though, to be able to place elsewhere? We'll see. Max Biaggi, maybe he's had enough in the paddock. Maybe he's had enough after the aggravation of this year and the amount of trouble that they had with, you mentioned it earlier, the Tom Booth-Amos affair. It was quite difficult to keep control of all of that. I wonder where Peter Ertl was in all of that as well. We never really got any statements from Peter, did we, regarding the whole thing? It was always Max that everyone talked about. Peter Ertl kept his head down regarding that. We never did get a statement from him individually, unless you did, Pete.
No. I think it was coming out as the Max Racing team, and with Biaggi as the sort of the figurehead, as you say, Keith. But Peter Ertl's definitely there. I mean, he's in the media room at most of the races based there. He's definitely part of the team and working with the team. And I think it's his grid slots, and that's why it's continuing next year with him as part of this new sort of alliance, if you like, with Intact GP and with Husqvarna backing in Moto3. So he will continue. But yeah, the Max Racing side, where will they be? We'll have to keep a lookout.
keep a lookout, crash.net, for all the very latest, as always. Now, before we get into our predictions for this weekend, of course, it's make or break for our predictions. It has been a bit of a tough time across motorcycle racing, especially with rider safety. We talk about it a lot. More tragedies across different forms of racing this year in motorcycles, and fresh from the red flag or lack of in Phillip Island for Jorge Navarro, who was left seriously injured and stranded as bikes continued at full speed. The MotoGP Riders Safety Commission met at Sepang and included an explanation of why the red flags were mistakenly not shown. And they basically admitted they'd mucked up. Fine, don't do it again. But the more worrying thing, I thought, Keith, was that it was reported that less than half of the 24 riders bothered to show up. In fact, I only counted 3: Aleix Espargaro, Joan Mir, and Alex Rins. That's a joke, surely.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you're being too flippant when you say that, Harry, to be honest with you. How on earth can you try and force through safety issues that are quite close to you, obviously, because you're the one that's going to be copping it if you get it wrong, if you don't attend the safety commission? I mean, I really, truly don't understand that. I remember Bradley Smith used to attend every single one, Britain's Bradley Smith. And he's an intelligent young fella, so he was the right kind of guy to have in there. But you can't ignore those kind of things. Sometimes it's a pain in the backside going to these kind of committee type things where everybody stands up and gives their opinion, and it's quite an awkward thing to go to. But you can't make a change if you don't turn up. It's a bit like hating our government, but you don't bother to vote. That kind of annoys the hell out of me when you hear people. Youngsters are the worst for it. Didn't bother to vote. Why didn't you? Well, I don't think it's worth it. If you live in a democracy, you've got to vote if you want to make a change. You've only got one vote, but you should use it. Same thing in the safety commission. If you want your voice to be heard, if you want your opinion on safety, you need to have rallied around the troops, made sure everybody's there. It's up to you to go. If you don't bother attending, then how can you expect everyone else to speak on your behalf? I find it very strange that some riders, or do I find it strange? Maybe I don't, because I know what riders are like. It's kind of over there, this safety commission. Oh, yeah, do we have to go to that? It's a bit like going back to school or doing your homework. But we're talking about the sport safety. And with the issues of Phillip Island fresh in your mind, you would think, wouldn't you? You would have had 100% turnout next time around. That's how I think. But obviously, clearly, that's not how everyone does.
Sounds like about 6 or 7, doesn't it? When we don't, the idea is it's the nearest thing, isn't it, to sort of any kind of rider organisation that there is in MotoGP, isn't it? That's really the only time when they all get together. It's not like Formula One where they have like some drivers' union or something, isn't it? I think, but MotoGP, they don't have that. They have the safety commission every Friday evening at a Grand Prix weekend, and it's not just safety, it's also a chance to speak about, I don't know, upcoming events or anything that involves the riders, that you want them all there and they can speak in confidence. So that's why you don't get a clear record of all this. It's not made public, because the idea is the riders can speak freely, and it's not going to be put out recorded. There's no cameras there or anything, but obviously after the safety commission meeting, the riders will be asked about it by the media, and they will say the topics that came up and that kind of thing. And so unsurprisingly, the topic of what happened at Phillip Island came up, and it sounds like Dorna Race Direction, made an effort to bring people there to speak with the riders and kind of go through this, knowing it's a serious matter what happened. And yeah, by the sounds of it, only 6 or 7 were there, unfortunately. And as Aleix said in that story you're quoting there, he said you can't criticize. In his mind, you can't criticize publicly what happened and then not turn up at the meeting. You've got to go along and speak to people face to face and hear what they've got to say, and how it's not going to happen in the future and things like that. There
was a pre-IRTA system, the International Race Teams Association, that Mike Trimby is the head of. Mike Trimby originally was pre-IRTA, where the riders had a voice, the riders through Mike Trimby. So Mike Trimby created a much safer environment for riders. It wasn't just about scrutineering and all the other nuts and bolts of things that used to aggravate teams and riders. And because of Trimby, we are where we are now. Mike Trimby was the guy that used to voice the opinions of riders and get things done regarding safety barriers, bales of hay as it was back in the day, and so on and so forth. But of course, as that moved on to be the International Road Racing Teams Association, he represents the teams now, which the riders are part of. So the riders have kind of lost that natural union, if you like, to force forward safety issues through one man. But they've still got the opportunity to turn up at the safety briefing and do something themselves. But obviously, for some reason or another, too many of them decided not to bother, which again, as I say, with Phillip Island fresh in your mind, you would have thought they would have. Don't understand it.
Yeah, and especially I think recently coming out, Jorge Navarro saying just, reliving the events of what he went through, quite shocked himself at what he had to go through. And if that doesn't resonate with the other riders, then, what will? But hopefully the fact that this has been made a little bit of in the media will then encourage them to go, more of them to go.
Well, hang on a second. If the fact you got a rider lying by the side of the track, no red flag came out, doesn't encourage them to go, I don't think what we say is going to have any bloody difference.
Not necessarily us, but just I think the uproar towards it. But even Aleix Espargaro calling him out, he was very vocal. Joan Mir, Alex Rins, all the only ones, as far as I know, who turned up, all saying, where was everybody else? We were all stood around waiting. We thought people were just coming in late. Where were they? I think, if you've got your own fellow riders questioning you on an issue as serious as this, I don't know. We can only hope. But I think bottom line is you need more than 3 people to go to something like that, don't you? Right. Well, let's end on a more positive note, shall we? Prediction time, if it can be positive. Michael Harrison has got his prediction in already. He's going for a Joan Mir win. That would be a great way for Suzuki to go out, wouldn't it? I'm going to go in first because I've already written mine down and I need some points on the board and I don't want to be accused of plagiarism. So I'm going for a Ducati, all Ducati podium, Bastianini for the win. I think there might be some controversy there. Bagnaia second, Miller third. Locked in. Who's ready? Who's got their 3 lined up? Who's next?
Well, I was going to go for a Bastianini win. I think I'm with you on that one. And I know Pete will as well because I think... In fairness, Pete had already said that right at the very beginning of the show.
No, I didn't hear that. I don't think I heard that. Yeah.
So I'm standing up for you, Pete, brother. He's too polite, Harry, to have brought it up himself, so I'll do it for him. But I'll go with the Bastianini, Alex Rins.
Oh, okay.
Bagnaia.
Oh, no, I like that. I like the Rins. Yeah, that'd be a nice way for Suzuki to go out, wouldn't it? And a marker down from Anea before he joins his teammate. Pete, what you got for us?
I'm going to go with a Marc Marquez win.
Oh, is that a last-minute change?
This is the last chance, isn't it? Honda haven't won a race this year. They're the only manufacturer that hasn't won. Left-handed track, which we know Mark goes well on. And I don't know, I just have a feeling that he said himself that Valencia is going to be better for them than Sepang. So maybe he could be back to the Phillip Island sort of form. That was the last anti-clockwise track. I don't know. I just wouldn't. So yeah, why not? I'm going to go for a win for Mark. Second Bastianini, and third I will go Bagnaia.
Oh, all right then. And I'm assuming you both think Pecco is going to win the title with those predictions, even though you both locked in Fabio Quartararo a few rounds ago.
You keep reminding us of that every week. It's the little pleasure you get, isn't it?
Well, I mean...
Did we predict anyone at the start of the year, though? Did we make any title predictions at the start of the season?
Yeah.
Did we? Oh.
Yeah, that might be...
I can't remember. I remember my last year's title prediction was Johann Zarco at the time, and that ended badly. And this year, I mean, I take the piss out of you going for Fabio, but who went for Aleix? It was me. But that would have been a great story, though. Still, hopefully, I hope he can get third, but I have a suspicion Anea will nick that third place from him anyway. Not long to wait, though, until we find out who the world champion of 2022 in MotoGP is. It's going to be an absolute cracker. Moto2 and Moto3 in action as well, of course. And in the meantime, make sure you tuned in across crash.net for all the latest news and analysis across the week. And then we'll be back with you sometime next week. We're still trying to figure that out, but we'll have all the reaction from Valencia and the news from all the testing as well, because Pete's going to be down the ground. So a bumper show for you on that. You can get your questions in, as always. Leave them in the comments section. Tweet, Instagram, Facebook us. Just search Crash MotoGP. If you've got any topics you'd like us to discuss in the off-season, away from the on-track activities, we'd love to hear those as well. You can leave us a review wherever you get your podcast too, and we shall see you right back here next week. Bye-bye.